Welcome back, everybody. Ready for another deep dive?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
All right, so today we're going to be looking at procurement
Okay.
for events and sponsorships.
All right.
Um, and the source material that we're using for this is
Okay.
an article from Procure for Marketing
Uh-huh.
called Key Takeaways from Procurement in Events and Sponsorships.
All right.
So I think this is going to be super relevant to a lot of our listeners out there.
Yeah.
If you're planning, a big conference,
Yeah.
or maybe sponsoring a local festival,
Uh-huh.
or even if you're just curious about
Yeah.
all the behind-the-scenes magic that makes these things happen.
Absolutely. So,
Yeah, why don't we start off by just getting a little bit of an overview of the procurement process?
yeah, so I think whether you're organizing like a small workshop or a massive music festival, the principles are really similar.
Okay.
And it all starts with strategic planning.
Okay, so the article really emphasizes that this is the foundation
Yeah.
of the successful event.
Yeah, for sure. It's not just about the glitz and the glamour.
Right.
It's about making sure that your events and your sponsorships are really aligning with your overall marketing strategy.
Right.
So before you even think about, booking a venue or sending out invitations, you need to take a step back
Okay.
and ask yourself, what are you hoping to achieve?
Yeah.
Are you looking to boost brand awareness, generate leads,
Uh-huh.
or maybe build stronger relationships with key clients?
Right, so it's really all about purpose, not just party planning.
Exactly.
Okay, so how do we go about defining these objectives and making sure they're actually measurable?
Yeah, you got it. Setting those measurable goals is key.
Okay.
For example, if your aim is to increase brand awareness,
Uh-huh.
you might set a goal to achieve a certain number of, social media mentions
Okay.
or impressions during the event.
Okay.
Or if regeneration is your focus, you might aim to gather a specific number of qualified leads.
So you can actually track those results.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So speaking of, getting things done and putting those plans into action, how do we choose the right vendors?
Yeah.
It feels like there are just endless options out there.
Oh, yeah. It can definitely feel a bit overwhelming.
Yeah.
But think of it like you're assembling a dream team, for a project.
Okay.
You want people with experience. You want them to be reliable.
Right.
And you want someone you can actually work with.
Yeah.
So don't just jump at the first, flashy website you see.
Right.
You really want to take the time to do your research.
Okay.
Look at their track record, read reviews,
Uh-huh.
talk to other people who have worked with them.
It's like finding those hidden gems.
Yeah.
Right. The vendors who really understand your vision and can help bring it to life.
Yeah.
Okay, so once you've found them, how do you make sure you're getting the best deal possible?
Right.
Negotiation can feel a little bit intimidating to some people.
Yeah.
Like a high-stakes game of poker.
Well, negotiation is definitely a skill that you can hone over time. It's less about bluffing, and more about preparation.
Right.
Understanding both sides of the equation.
Okay.
What are your needs? What are the vendor's goals? Where is there some room for compromise?
Yeah.
A successful negotiation isn't about one side winning and the other losing.
Right.
It's about finding that sweet spot where everyone feels like they've, gained something valuable.
So it's about collaboration rather than confrontation.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Now let's talk about something that can make or break an event.
Sure.
The budget.
Uh-huh.
I think we've all heard those horror stories about events that spiraled out of control financially.
Yeah, it's true. You don't want to end up with an event that's more of a financial burden than a success story.
Right.
The key is meticulous planning
Okay.
and monitoring of those expenses.
Okay.
And here's a pro tip.
Okay, I'm listening.
Don't just create like a general budget.
Okay.
Break it down, into smaller categories.
All right.
Like catering, entertainment, marketing,
Oh.
and assign a spending limit to each.
Yeah, that granular approach, I can see how that would be really helpful.
Yeah.
It's easy to get, swept up in the excitement of planning
Right.
and lose sight of the numbers.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's say we've planned our event.
Okay.
We've stuck to our budget.
Uh-huh.
How do you know if your event was actually successful?
Right.
Is it all about attendance figures?
Well, attendance is certainly one metric,
Okay.
but it's not the whole story.
Okay.
You need to kind of look beyond the numbers and think about the impact your event had.
Okay.
Think back to those clear objectives that you set, in the planning stage.
Uh-huh.
Did you achieve what you set out to do?
Right. So did you actually hit those measurable goals?
Exactly. And you can gather feedback, from attendees,
Yeah.
from sponsors, and from your own team to get a well-rounded view.
So it's a feedback loop.
Yeah,
Okay, I like that. It's not just a one-time event. It's an opportunity to learn and improve for next time.
exactly.
Speaking of things that can go wrong, let's talk about risk management.
Okay.
What are some of the common pitfalls that people should be prepared for?
Yeah, you're right. Even with the most meticulous planning, unexpected things can and do happen.
Oh, for sure.
Picture this, your keynote speaker gets laryngitis,
Okay.
a sudden storm rolls in,
Oh,
or the caterer has a major mishap.
like Murphy's Law, right?
Exactly. The key is to kind of anticipate these potential problems
Okay.
and have a backup plan, ready to go.
So it's like having a plan B in your back pocket.
Yeah.
So, for example, if the keynote speaker is unable to attend, you have a list of, potential replacements.
Yeah, exactly. Or if you're planning an outdoor event,
Uh-huh.
have a contingency plan in case of, inclement weather.
Right.
That proactive risk management can literally save the day
Yeah.
and protect the integrity of your event.
I'm starting to see a theme here. Preparation is key.
Yeah, definitely.
So speaking of being prepared, let's not forget about the legal side of things.
Okay.
Contracts, permits, regulations.
Uh-huh.
It can feel a bit overwhelming to some people.
Yeah, you're right. The legal and compliance aspects are often overlooked,
Uh-huh.
but they're absolutely crucial.
Okay.
Think of it like this. You wouldn't build a house without a solid foundation, right?
Right.
The same applies to events and sponsorships.
Okay, so where do we even begin? What are some of the key things that people should be aware of?
It all starts with having those comprehensive contracts in place that
Mhm.
clearly outline, the terms and conditions for all your vendors and sponsors.
Okay.
This helps protect everyone involved and ensures that, everyone is on the same page.
Right, so it minimizes the risk of any misunderstandings down the line.
Exactly.
Okay, and of course we can't forget about permits and licenses, making
Right.
sure that we're adhering to all of the relevant laws and regulations.
Yeah, it's better to be safe than sorry,
Yeah,
especially when it comes to legal matters.
so I think a lot of people might get a little bit intimidated by this part of the process,
Yeah,
but it sounds like it's really all about having those safeguards in place.
absolutely.
Okay, so now let's talk about something a little bit more exciting.
Okay.
Technology. I feel like there are so many tools out there now
Yeah.
that can help streamline event planning and make things so much more efficient.
You're absolutely right. From, event management software to social media analytics,
Uh-huh.
technology can be a game changer for event planners and sponsors.
So I'm curious to hear about some specific examples.
Sure.
What are some of the ways that people are using technology to really take their events to the next level?
Well, there are so many possibilities. For
Yeah.
instance, event management software
Uh-huh.
can help you manage registrations,
Okay.
create interactive event maps,
Cool.
and even track, attendee engagement in real time.
Wow.
CRM systems can help you manage sponsor relationships,
Okay.
track communication,
Uh-huh.
and social media analytics tools can give you valuable insights into, how people are talking about your event online.
So instead of feeling overwhelmed by all these moving parts,
Yeah,
technology can actually simplify our lives and allow us to make, smarter decisions.
precisely.
Okay.
Think about how you can use technology to your advantage, whether it's automating tasks, gathering valuable data, or creating a more engaging experience for
Mhm.
your attendees. It's all about finding the right tools
Right.
for your specific needs
Uh-huh.
and using them strategically.
I think a lot of people are intimidated by technology,
Yeah,
but it really can be a powerful ally when it comes to event planning and sponsorship.
absolutely. It's about embracing the possibilities and using technology to enhance your events,
Okay.
not to replace the human touch.
Right. Speaking of that human touch, let's talk about something that's becoming increasingly important to consumers.
Okay.
Sustainability.
Uh-huh.
How can we incorporate sustainability principles into our events and sponsorships?
That's a great question. More and more consumers are looking to support businesses that align with their values,
Right.
and sustainability is a big one.
Yeah, for sure.
There are so many ways to make your events
Uh-huh.
more eco-friendly and socially responsible.
Yeah, so what are some steps that people can take?
Yeah.
It'd feel overwhelming to know where to start.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be overwhelming. Start by making small changes.
Okay.
For example, opt for reusable or recyclable materials whenever possible.
Okay.
Instead of printing, hundreds of programs,
Right.
consider using a digital format.
Okay.
Choose caterers who prioritize local sourcing and sustainable practices.
Yeah.
Even small changes can make a big difference.
It's about being mindful and making those conscious choices.
Exactly.
I'm starting to realize that there are so many interconnected elements to creating a successful event.
Yeah.
It's not just about one thing.
You're absolutely right. It's about bringing together all these different pieces from, strategic planning to sustainability
Right.
to create an experience that's not only enjoyable,
Right.
but also impactful and meaningful.
Absolutely. Yeah, it really is all about making those conscious choices that reflect, not just what we want to see in the world, but also what resonates with our audience.
Yeah, for sure. Consumers are becoming, more discerning about which brands they support,
Right.
and they want to see their values, aligning with the companies they do business with.
Absolutely. So speaking of, kind of changing consumer preferences and how things are evolving, the events landscape itself has obviously transformed
Oh, yeah,
in recent years,
for sure.
with virtual and hybrid events.
Uh-huh.
So how has that shift kind of impacted procurement?
Yeah, that's a great question. The virtual and hybrid event boom has definitely shaken things up a bit.
Right.
Procurement teams now have to consider, a whole new set of factors.
Okay.
In addition to thinking about physical venues and vendors,
Right.
we have to think about digital platforms, streaming services, online engagement tools.
Right.
It definitely adds a layer of complexity,
Uh-huh.
but it also opens up, exciting new possibilities.
So I can imagine that that presents some unique challenges for sponsors as well.
Yeah.
How do you ensure that sponsors are still getting value
Right.
out of these virtual and hybrid experiences?
Yeah, it's all about adapting and finding, creative solutions.
Okay.
Think virtual booths, interactive polls,
Uh-huh.
sponsored breakout sessions,
Okay.
even branded digital swag,
Right.
The possibilities are really endless.
It sounds like procurement professionals these days really need to be
Oh, yeah.
incredibly adaptable
For
to
sure.
navigate this, rapidly changing landscape.
Absolutely.
What other skills are becoming essential for success in this field?
Yeah. Well, adaptability is key, for sure.
Okay.
But another skill that I think is becoming increasingly important is data analysis.
Okay.
Procurement teams are using data to make, more informed decisions about everything from vendor selection
Okay.
to budget allocation
Yeah.
to measuring the return on investment of their events and sponsorships.
Data really is king these days, isn't it?
It really is.
It seems like, every industry is emphasizing that data-driven decision-making.
Yeah, and for good reason.
Right.
Data provides insights that can help you refine your strategies, optimize your spending,
Uh-huh.
and ultimately create more impactful events and sponsorships.
So it's not just about, gut feelings anymore.
Right.
It's about backing up your choices with solid evidence.
Exactly.
Okay, so that leads me to a question about procurement in general.
Okay.
You know, I think it's often seen as a purely transactional function,
Right.
but I'm getting the sense that it's much more strategic than that.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Procurement isn't just about getting the lowest price
Uh-huh.
or ticking boxes on a checklist.
Okay.
It's really about creating value for the organization.
Okay.
And that means, ensuring that every dollar spent on events and sponsorships
Right.
contributes to achieving those strategic marketing goals that we talked about earlier.
So it's about aligning procurement with the bigger picture,
Exactly.
like the overall marketing strategy,
Yes,
and making sure that everything is working in harmony.
exactly. And that requires strong communication and collaboration
Okay.
between procurement teams and their marketing counterparts.
Okay.
They need to be on the same page, working together to ensure that events and sponsorships are strategically aligned and effectively executed.
So it sounds like procurement is becoming, increasingly integrated
It is.
into that overall marketing function.
Yeah, it's a trend that I definitely expect to see, continuing in the years to come as the marketing landscape continues to evolve.
Right.
Procurement professionals who can embrace data technology and, a strategic mindset are going to be in high demand.
You're going to be the unsung heroes.
Yeah.
Right? The masterminds behind the scenes, making sure everything runs smoothly and
Exactly.
delivers results.
Exactly. Their contributions might not always be visible, to the naked eye,
Right.
but they're essential to the success of any organization that hosts events or engages in sponsorships.
Absolutely. So earlier we talked about sustainability in the context of, specific events.
Yeah.
But I'm curious to hear a little bit more about how sustainability is impacting procurement practices as a whole.
Sure.
It seems like this is a trend that's gaining momentum
Oh, definitely.
across all industries.
You're right. Sustainability is no longer just a nice to have.
Right.
It's becoming a core value
Uh-huh.
for many organizations.
Yeah.
And that's reflected in their procurement practices.
So what does that look like in practice?
Yeah.
Can you give us some examples?
Sure. Some organizations are focusing on, sourcing goods and services
Right.
from suppliers who meet, certain environmental and social standards.
Sure.
Others are prioritizing the use of recycled materials
Uh-huh.
or reducing waste in their supply chains.
Okay.
It's about making, conscious choices at every step of the process.
So it's a pretty holistic approach.
Yeah.
It's not just about one-off initiatives.
Right.
It's about embedding sustainability
Yeah.
into the DNA of the organization.
That's a great way to put it. And it's not just about doing the right thing, for the planet.
Right.
It also makes good business sense.
Okay.
Sustainable procurement practices can actually help organizations reduce costs,
Uh-huh.
mitigate risks,
Okay.
and enhance their brand reputation.
So it's a win-win, really.
Yeah.
Consumers are becoming more and more aware of the impact of, their choices.
Mm-hmm.
And they want to support businesses that are, making a positive difference.
Absolutely. And procurement professionals who are, knowledgeable about sustainability and can incorporate these principles into their strategies
Right.
are going to be, well positioned to help their organizations thrive in this evolving landscape.
It sounds like the role of procurement is evolving rapidly.
Yeah.
What are some of the other trends that you see on the horizon?
Yeah.
What skills will procurement professionals need to master
Yeah.
to kind of stay ahead of the curve?
That's a great question. I think we're going to continue to see a growing emphasis on technology, data, and sustainability.
Okay.
These are really the forces that are shaping the future of procurement
Uh-huh.
across all industries.
So it seems like those are the recurring themes that we keep coming back to
Yeah,
throughout our conversation today.
they are for good reason.
Right.
These are really the factors that are, reshaping the way businesses operate and
Yeah.
interact with the world around them.
Can you give us some specific examples of, developments you anticipate?
Yeah, well, I think we're going to see even more sophisticated, procurement software and analytics tools emerge,
Okay.
which will, equip organizations to make more data-driven decisions and streamline their processes, even further.
So even more automation and efficiency.
Exactly. And I also think that we'll see, a greater focus on building strategic partnerships
Okay.
between procurement teams and their internal stakeholders,
Uh-huh.
as well as, external vendors and suppliers.
Okay.
It's about creating a collaborative ecosystem where everyone benefits.
It's all about collaboration and creating those win-win scenarios that we talked about earlier.
Precisely. And finally, I think we'll see sustainability become even more, deeply ingrained in procurement practices.
Uh-huh.
It will no longer be just a box to tick,
Right.
but a fundamental principle
Okay.
that guides every decision.
So it's no longer a nice to have, it's a must have.
Exactly.
And I think that's a really encouraging sign.
I agree. It shows that businesses are starting to recognize that, sustainability is not just good for the planet,
Right.
but also good for business.
This has been a really insightful conversation. I feel like we've barely scratched the surface
Yeah.
of this, complex and fascinating world of procurement.
Yeah.
But I've gained, a whole new appreciation for the role that it plays
Mm-hmm.
in shaping, the events and sponsorships landscape.
Yeah, there's always more to explore, but I'm glad you found it valuable.
Yeah.
It's a field that's constantly evolving.
Right.
Which is what makes it so, dynamic and engaging.
Absolutely. So before we wrap up, I'd love to hear your thoughts on, the future of procurement
Okay.
in the events and sponsorships realm.
Okay.
What trends are you seeing
Yeah.
on the horizon?
That's a great question. I think we'll continue to see, a growing emphasis on personalization
Okay.
and creating truly unique experiences for attendees.
That makes sense. In a world where we're constantly bombarded with information and stimuli,
Right.
events really need to stand out
Yeah.
and offer something truly memorable.
Exactly. And that means, using data and technology to really understand attendee preferences
Uh-huh.
and tailor experiences accordingly.
Right.
We might see more events incorporating elements like augmented reality, virtual reality,
Cool.
or, personalized itineraries.
So it's like taking event planning to a whole new level.
It is. And I think we'll also see, a shift towards more purpose-driven events.
Okay.
Consumers are increasingly looking for experiences that
Yeah.
align with their values
Uh-huh.
and make a positive impact on the world.
So it's not just about entertainment
Yeah.
anymore. It's about creating experiences
Yeah.
that are meaningful and make a difference.
Precisely. And that means, thinking carefully about the environmental and social impact of events and sponsorships.
Yeah, it sounds like the future of events and sponsorships is really all about creating those experiences that are not only engaging, but also meaningful
Yeah,
and align with our values.
that's exactly right. It's about moving beyond the superficial
Mm-hmm.
and creating something that truly resonates with people.
Absolutely. Well, I'm so glad we had the chance to really explore this topic in depth.
Yeah.
We've covered a lot of ground today from, the nuts and bolts of vendor selection and contract negotiation
Mm-hmm.
to the broader, strategic implications of aligning procurement with overall marketing goals.
Right.
And even the evolving role of technology and sustainability.
Yeah, it's been a fascinating discussion, and I hope our listeners, are walking away with a deeper understanding
Mhm.
of how much strategic thinking goes into procurement
Right.
and how it can be leveraged, to create truly impactful events and sponsorships.
I think our listeners are leaving with a whole new appreciation
Yeah,
for this often unseen world of procurement.
yeah,
It's not just about buying things.
right.
It's about making smart strategic decisions that drive results and
Yeah.
create value.
I couldn't agree more. Procurement is often seen as kind of a back office function,
Uh-huh.
but it really does play a vital role in shaping the experiences we have as consumers
Right.
and, the impact that businesses have on the world around them.
Absolutely. So before we wrap up, is there any final piece of advice you'd like to leave our listeners with?
Um, I think the most important takeaway is to never underestimate the power of relationships.
Okay.
Building strong relationships with your vendors,
Okay.
your internal stakeholders,
Uh-huh.
and your sponsors, is crucial to success in this field.
Yeah, that's such great advice.
Yeah,
Relationships are at the heart of everything we do.
absolutely.
So thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the world of procurement
Yeah,
in events and sponsorships.
my pleasure.
We hope you found it informative and maybe even a little bit inspiring.
It's been a pleasure sharing these insights with you and the listeners.
And for those of you who want to explore this topic even further,
Yeah,
we encourage you to check out the original source material.
okay.
The article titles Key Takeaways from Procurement in Events and Sponsorships from Procure for Marketing.
Great article.
Find a link to it in our show notes.
All right.
So as you plan your next event or consider a sponsorship opportunity, remember that strategic planning, smart negotiation, and careful attention to detail can make all the difference.
Absolutely.
And don't be afraid to embrace innovation,
Yeah,
leverage technology, and prioritize sustainability.
couldn't say it better myself.
Until next time, keep diving deep and keep learning.